First of all, I have to apologize for speaking in English. I'm 100% Greek. I travel on a Greek passport. I think I have it with me, my Greek passport. And I don't speak Greek properly. But I can speak English very slowly. And I am going to, in the time given me, do 5 things. The first is tell you a story. And the reason I wanted to remind you that I'm Greek is that I'm going to tell you a story that is not very complimentary. And it goes back to about 7 years ago when I was invited to give a speech, public speech in Athens about the future of the Internet. And there must have been 2,000 people in the audience. And as I was speaking, the audience was dead. There were no smiles on the faces. There were nobody sort of excited. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing wrong? So I tried to get more excited, and the whole speech was dead. And finally I said, it's open for questions. And in the front row were the officials, and the first person to ask a question was the then foreign minister, George Papandreou, who asks, Nicholas, will Greece play an important role in the Internet? And I said, absolutely not. And I said, the reason I can say absolutely not is because the Internet is a collaborative medium and Greece is not a collaborative people. At which point the whole room exploded in cheers and claps and so on. And I said, what? Greece needs to be more collaborative, and telecommunications and the Internet's going to do it. And as a sub-theme to all of this, whether it's broadband or narrowband, is that we are seeing around the world that people are collaborating in ways we didn't anticipate. Some parents may even question whether the social networks are collaboration, but they are. So I'm going to do some background on telecommunications in general because most people forget that it's one of the biggest industries in the world. It's 100 times the entertainment industry. It's 2 times the military industry. It's 5 to 6% of the world GDP. It's a very, very big industry. And if you reach out and you include the constituent parts of content, it's even bigger. And it's an industry that's gone through some very serious revolutions in the past 30 years, perhaps the biggest being that it became digital. And when it became digital, it completely transformed how telecommunications worked. And for those of you who are technical in the audience, a piece of that was packet communications. And then wireless came. And when wireless came, the change was phenomenal, not just in terms of what might be in your pocket and the way you communicate with cell phones and the change in your behavior, but in terms of how fast countries could become telecommunications intense. A country like Bolivia that had no major telecommunications infrastructure in 1 month got a nationwide cellular system. It only took a month. And that was very important because you can roll out telecommunications at speeds that are just totally different than what happened before. And this will be true for broadband as well. Very often people think broadband is just a fast pipe. It's like having a water pipe that lets out just a little bit of water, and broadband will be like a fire hydrant. Well, I would like to change your view of what broadband is. And I want to do that in 2 ways. The first of all is to remind you that broadband is the number of bits per second, and yet the number of bits per second that you consume is irrelevant to the quality and meaning of what you consume. And let me give you a very specific example of what I mean. If you read a book, it takes you about 2 hours, let's say on average, to read, if you're a fast reader, to read a book. And that book has less than 10 million bits in it. If you look at high-definition television, you consume 10 million bits every second. So in one of them, you're consuming 10 million bits per second, and in the other one, you're consuming 10 million bits over 2 hours. There is no way you can say the values of the bits are correlated. They are independent. So how many bits you get per second does not relate directly to the quality of the experience. Very often the 10 million bits that you consume in the 2 hours is a richer experience. And the second thing I would like you to remember is that the best way to use broadband very often is not to use it as a stream, but if you have, let's say, 1 billion bits per second, or a so-called gigabit, maybe the best way to use that is to use 1 million bits in 1,000th of a second. And all I mean by that is that's the response time. It's when you hit the carriage return and something comes up on the screen, but nothing after that. So broadband isn't just video pouring into your house. It's when you click, when you're browsing and something comes very fast on the screen, and that fast response time is, in my opinion, the highest value that broadband brings to people around the world. Now, how does this affect media? New media, newspapers, books, magazines, they're all looking at this in ways that are threatening, ways that are changing their industries. And I'm going to take newspapers and books as my examples because they have in common the use of words. Television and video, there'll be a lot of that described in the next sessions and tomorrow. Words and news will not go away. Books and newspapers will disappear. Now, why will books and newspapers disappear, and how will words and news stay? Well, the reason books and newspapers will disappear is because paper has no place anymore. English is the only language, to my knowledge, that uses the word paper in the name newspaper. And paper doesn't work. Paper doesn't work in a number of ways that are environmental, a number of ways that are economic, but also when you leave paper, you get interactivity, you get updates, you get lots of things. It just is the case that today, reading on a screen is unpleasant. It's unpleasant because it's like looking at a 100-watt light bulb shining in your eyes, and that has to change first, but it is changing. In fact, you will see about 20 electronic book readers on the market by the end of the year that don't do that, that are very comfortable for reading newspapers, books, and magazines. So the book industry changes, words don't, and interactivity and personalized media become prevalent. Now, the reason I mention that is because books allow me to move the subject, as I invariably would do, to something very dear to my heart, which is on the screen, is an idea that, while it may not relate directly to Greece, is something that is very book-centric. And this image you see on the screen is in Peru, one of 31 countries.